Anyway, moving on, but still talking about the California fires, I have a real expert here to dispel the myth of climate change had anything to do with this catastrophic fire. And that's Steve Goreham. He's the executive director for the Climate Science Coalition of America and author of 4 books on energy, climate change, sustainable development, and public policy, with over 100,000 copies in print. He is an Illinoisan as well. His latest book is The Green Breakdown, The Coming Renewable Energy Failure. And he wrote me a little email a while back saying, is 2025 going to be the end of green energy? And then the California fires hit. And I said, well, Steve, actually, I really want you to dispel some of these myths about what's going on in Los Angeles. And, we do know wildfires are raging near Los Angeles, California. Are these due to human-caused global warming, as some are claiming? And welcome to the program, Steve. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Jeannie. Happy New Year. Great to join you again. Yeah, really a tragedy down in Southern California. A terrible situation, of course. More than 10,000 structures destroyed. It really is a testimony of the power of nature and what can happen. And they get these Santa Ana winds that blow out of Nevada and up to 100 miles an hour. They've had these before, but this seems to be the worst situation on record that they've had. And we do have some people claiming that your neighbor's SUV has to be causing all this, but that's really a kind of a sad situation. And they just need to find better ways to take proper measures to reduce the risk of fire.
Well, it does seem that seems to be that they are actually doing pretty well in the 20th century in terms of mitigating the I was reading from Wall Street Journal article before that, in the 1800s, they would burn 4.5 million acres a year. And now they were down to 250,000 acres a year. And then just in the recent years, they've been, wildfires are gotten out of control again. And it's up to 1.5 million acres a year. I mean, this is just amazing. The other part of this, though, is how does particular pollution from the large fire compare to pollution from vehicles? Because that's why they started down this whole green energy climate thing, is that we've got to get the pollution out of the air. And from pollution, they usually mean CO2. But if I'm not mistaken, I think firefighters are creating a lot of CO2.
Well, absolutely they are. Yeah, there's a mixture, unfortunately, in the press. They talk about air pollution.
Oh, yeah.
And they talk about harmful pollution, and they mix greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, with things like particulates, which can actually cause a problem. And for many years, California has been pushing to reduce particulates as well. About 3 or 4 years ago, in January, they passed regulations on lawnmowers and leaf blowers to try and get the particle pollution down. But what's going on now in California is that the fires emit far more particulate pollution far more particles than all the vehicles, as a matter of fact. An expert from the University of California, Davis, has estimated that about 10,000 tons of what they call PM 2.5, which is a particle with a 2.5 micron diameter, small particle. But it's estimated that all the vehicles in California emit about 10,000 tons of PM 2.5 in a year. But one of these large fires, a typical large fire, can do this in a week. And so the fires down in right now around Los Angeles probably have emitted more particle pollution than all the vehicles in California for a number of years, many years. So, this really is a big issue they should be focusing on instead of leaf blowers and lawnmowers. And again, a very tough situation. By the way, the other thing they did back in that same year when they passed a regulation on leaf blowers and lawnmowers, they legalized recreational marijuana use. And the average, a single marijuana cigarette, or a regular cigarette for that matter, the user inhales about 100 billion small particles. And again, one marijuana joint is about the same as breathing the air in California for a year. So if they really want to reduce particulate pollution, number one is forest fires. Number two is smoking. I mean, if that's what you're after, it's not all this other stuff that they're trying to pass regulations on.
That's a really good point. I'm going to keep that in the back of my head because, we've got a massive marijuana industry here that the government likes a lot. Okay, so let's go on because, before the California wildfires, started up, And actually, I think that it's really going to kind of be a game changer. I think there will be people that wake up to this, and I think they'll want their money spent in better ways on the right things. And so my hope is that some of this green energy stuff, not just because of Trump, but because consumers are rejecting it, I'm hoping that, like you are intimating, that in 2025, it may be the year that dooms green energy. What indicators do you see at this point that might happen?
Yeah, so let me correct your first statement. I don't think green energy is going to end in 2025. It's going to be many decades, but I do think the pendulum is going to start swinging back. 4 big indicators. One is the tremendous need for electricity driven by artificial intelligence. That's going to stop closing of power plants and things. What's going on with the EV slowdown. And then the third item is wind and solar and battery problems. There are just problems getting worse and worse and worse with those systems. And finally, of course, the Trump administration policies. We're going to have a big change in energy policy starting in a few days. And these things are going to make renewables very, very tough to go forward.
So there are some states, though, that may, take it to the next level. And I think Illinois is one of them. They're going to try, and they've already tried that because they wrote this skinny energy package, this skinny change to CEJA. And essentially what they did is they incentivized more battery, giving them a high impact business status, meaning that they're eligible for additional subsidies. And so, and battery technology, battery storage is probably the worst and most expensive way to actually put energy to the grid.
Yeah, it's very, very expensive. And anywhere they put these they're going to put these batteries in, electricity rates are going to skyrocket. The National Renewable Energy Laboratory estimates that to put down a solar installation costs about $1 million per megawatt. But then to back that solar system up for a single day, you have to spend $9 million in batteries. And the battery life is only about half of the solar life. So to back up a solar system or a wind system, the battery cost is more than 10 times the cost of the solar and wind system itself. And this is a situation, but we have Illinois, we have New York, we have California and others trying to put in a lot of these batteries. And by the way, I just learned a week ago, they had 3 fires in New York, grid battery fires this last summer. That really didn't get into the press very much.
No, it didn't.
They don't have many batteries right now. They want to build 20 times as many batteries. By the way, one of those fires burned for 4 days, and these things just they're very volatile. They can explode and burn. Just another problem with renewables and batteries and wind.
But, I cannot stress it enough to my listeners, especially if you're sitting in Illinois. This is they just passed this bill on Tuesday out of the House that incentivizes battery storage. Why? Because they cannot get enough solar and wind to the grid right now because they have transmissions issues. And so they think part of the solution is to store that sunshine in a battery. And so but it's really, really costly to this. And it doesn't matter, wind or solar battery, it all needs a backup when it's not producing and when it's not working, when it's been, just by sitting there in storage, it's been depleted. Batteries, look, my husband builds this stuff. Okay. He builds transmission lines. He built 4 miles of new transmission line, high voltage stuff in Staten Island. It took 2.5 years when he got started with the project. It had already been in process for 1.5 years. It's really, really expensive to do this work. He did it through a garbage dump. You can't do any of this. Batteries are only good for like your laptop, your cell phone, something like that. They are not meant to put grid level energy up. No, they aren't. And by the way, those transmission is another big issue with wind and solar, because wind and solar require 100 times the land of a nuclear, a gas, or a coal power plant, 100 times the land. And so you have to build out to remote areas, up on ridges, out in the ocean. You have to build all this transmission. You require 2 or 3 times more transmission than you need with a traditional power system. And then it's very, very expensive as well. It's impossible to do. It's actually impossible to do. Okay, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with more great information from Steve Goreham. Stay tuned. This is The Real Story with Jeane Ives. Hey, welcome back. It's The Real Story with Jeane Ives, and I still have Steve Goreham with me. on the phone. And we are, he's the executive director of the Climate Science Coalition of America. And we've been talking a lot about the renewable energy and, what's the outlook for it in 2025. That also includes things that feed off the renewable energy. So your electric car sales. And I don't know if you knew this, Steve, but J.B. Pritzker announced in December almost $20 million for 70 zero-emission buses for 9 Illinois school districts.
Yeah, I heard that, and I think maybe you alerted me to that. That's, boy, I know. I've told my kids and grandkids don't go on electric school buses. I think there's a big risk there. I sometimes show when I present, I show pictures of these buses that are blowing up in London, in Paris, in China. There's one in China with one at an intersection that has exploded in flames, and there are people literally jumping out of the door on top of each other. And by the way, these things are 2 or 3 times as expensive as a regular diesel school bus or a propane bus, which we have a lot of those on the roads now as well. But yeah, more than $2 billion came from the Biden administration, and I think Illinois got a bunch of that money.
Well, at the same time, Lion Electric Bus Company down in Joliet completely folded. They're in bankruptcy. I mean, it's just not. They don't have a good model here. It's not working.
Yep. The history's been terrible. If you look at the history of these electric buses in Canada and all around the world, they're always going bankrupt. They don't run. They can't get parts for them. I mean, they're just on and on, problem after problem. But again, this is the philosophy that we have to force everybody to drive electric buses or electric cars in order to stop the oceans from rising. That is modern superstition, just the craziest thing.
So do you think that there is going to be a little bit more of an, reality check for these electric, car companies? I mean, Rivian, they got a big, massive payout. I think VW is going to come in with $1 billion. The state of Illinois gave them $827 million in incentives. They had already gotten $50 million prior to that. They got cut a check for $75 million directly to them, straight to their bottom line. Yet this is the same company, speaking of buses, the same company that contacted the normal bus transit system and said, hey, we're having trouble charging our vehicles. How do you charge your buses? And the response was, we only charge them during the winter. We charge them inside a heated garage, but never between the hours of 2 to 7 p.m. because it's too expensive.
That's cost effective, right? Now you got to heat this garage so you can charge your buses.
Yeah.
Well, the EV market stalled this last year. U.S. EV share was up just a little bit. Mm-hmm. EV pickups are not selling. Only about 1% of pickup truck share has become EVs. In Europe, EV sales fell 9%, and the share declined to 15%, down from about 20%. And Tesla just a week ago announced that their sales fell for the first time since 2012. So the market is not going well. And now President Trump is going to get in there, and he's going to try to eliminate all those EV tax credits, $7,500 on an EV. And in the resale tax credits as well, if he's able to do that, I think they're going to have to pass something through Congress to get that done. It's going to be a big market slowdown as well.
Well, they could possibly do that in reconciliation with the, extending the tax credits because it goes within that same realm. Yeah. We're hopeful. So what else do you see from other states that gives you a little bit of hope that perhaps there's more reality coming forward? There's
two crazy things that are just occurring. In Oklahoma, they had hundreds of people march on their legislature, and they were demanding a ban on all wind and solar projects in Oklahoma. And Oklahoma gets about 40% of electricity from wind and solar right now, but the cities and counties don't want any more of them. And what these states have done in the past is they just ignore the local folks, and they just say, well, you can just build it. We'll do it from a state level. And so they are pushing there to get a ban on new wind and solar. And then out in Wyoming, Senator Sherry Steinmetz, the state senator, just introduced a bill that was, quote, make carbon dioxide great again, no net zero. And, they have said, well, we want to have net zero from our power plants, which run mostly on coal. We want to capture carbon dioxide. And so they've now introduced a bill there to stop that. So, I mean, we haven't seen this in the past, but we have some states starting to push back on this climate nonsense. Maybe this is the beginning of the pendulum swinging back to common sense.
Well, speaking of, another dose of common sense when you're looking a little bit at larger scale, I do know that, what is it? Oh, yes. Banks are now leaving the Net Zero Climate Alliance.
Yep,
do you think that that's going to have an impact?
U.S. banks. Yep.
Yeah, isn't that the alliance that marries up financing with the global climate fight? And essentially, they weren't going to be willing to finance certain, I guess, fossil fuel stuff, or is it
right?
They were
wind and gas and all that. Well, what happened was we had a bunch of U.S. states that said, well, we're going to cut out all our pension money. Texas, West Virginia, Florida, and a number of others. More and more states were saying, well, we're not going to buy your funds. And so they said, okay, maybe we're going to withdraw from this. So they've taken a little softer tone, although a number of these banks, their European branches have not changed yet. So it really depends what the government situation is. But, this could be the year. And by the way, those offshore wind turbines are going to have a lot of problems, too. President Trump has talked about shutting those down.
Right.
We just had a turbine break up near Nantucket, a single blade, 350 feet long of fiberglass. It washed up on the beaches, and it took 6 trucks to take all the fiberglass debris away from a single wind turbine blade. Now, and off the coast of New Jersey, I've got a map that I used recently. I sent you a copy. There were 51 tropical storms and 26 hurricanes in the last 170 years. So about every 2.5 years, they get a hurricane or tropical storm. Wait till one of those hits a whole wind turbine farm and just destroys the thing. They're going to have mountains of debris on Long Island and Nantucket or Virginia Beach. All these places just not going to be good. They were screaming.
Wow.
They were screaming in Massachusetts about one wind turbine breaking up in the town halls. Just wait till we have this kind of disaster.
Well,
of course, who will pay for all this? It's the taxpayers to fix these things again.
Well, that's what's really so frustrating. Whether it's what you're looking at with the California wildfires, where Biden has now said that he's going to pay for the next 6 months of all expenses related to this, including $200,000 firefighter salaries. Plus $90,000 in benefits they get. Anyway, I mean, this is, I don't want to pay for it. And I'm not the one who's stupid enough to buy into this. And yet our fellow Americans have taken us down this road where now if you do say that you think that eventually this is going to somewhat get undone, but we're going to be left with massive acres of solar farms that are going to be rotting there, leaching out harmful chemicals. And so we've got a huge cleanup mess on our hands because we never actually looked at concentrated power with a small footprint that actually works day in, day out, every hour, every minute. And I don't know where we got to this level of incompetence in our collective heads. And then we elevated these people to the most powerful positions. But that's what we did as a society, and we're going to pay for it.
Fear is a powerful motivator, the fear of climate change, climatism. But as I predict in Green Breakdown, I think in about 40 years, we're going to have the young people around the world who are environmentalists are going to be out there tearing down wind turbines and cleaning up all these solar installations. That's going to be a big environmental improvement.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it, especially coming on a Sunday night and discussing this issue. Again, it's Steve Goreham, Executive Director for the Climate Science Coalition of America. He's author of 4 books. His latest book is Green Breakdown, The Coming Renewable Energy Failure. And you can get his information at stevegoreham.com. Steve, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jeane.
All right. Have a great night. Okay. Right after this break,